the latest FDA-approved LASIK technology that helps the majority of patients achieve 20/20 vision for as little as $220 per eye. Dr. Greenberg has performed 75,000 laser eye surgeries and is one of the most experienced LASIK surgeons in Chicago.
What's that text again?
Text LIKE to 350350. That's LIKE to 350350 to schedule your free consultation today.
5:37 AM 560 traffic center time, and Jim Telemonti.
And lots of people are spending the last quarter of 2019 dealing with crashes on the roadways. Quite a few, including one in Downers Grove, reported on Butterfield at Highland. Speeds are reduced on the expressways and tollways. Collision on the inbound Kennedy at Fullerton just cleared. So we know significant congestion on the Kennedy or the Edens now. Speeds are reduced with the snow. The Eisenhower, the Stevenson, and the Pride are okay. No congestion to report on I-57 to Bishop Ford Freeway. Northbound Tri-State traffic's heavy from 60 Town Line to Bradley. There was an earlier crash there. Speeds are severely reduced on I-65 northbound from Maryville up to Toll Road. That's traffic. I'm Jim Telemonti on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast. From the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center, flurries this morning, otherwise cloudy, breezy, and 31. Patchy clouds and 22 overnight. Currently 25. Next news coming up at 6. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the IRS Radio Hour with Stephen Leahy. Every Sunday afternoon at 5 on AM 560, The Answer.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J. is Sean from Elmwood Park, and updating Tiffany Harris's soon-to-become legendary tour through the New York City criminal justice system. She was back in a Brooklyn criminal court for the second time in 3 days. This after she allegedly slugged a woman in the face, a Jewish woman in the face, in front of the victim's two young children in Prospect Heights on Sunday. This arraignment had a similar outcome to the one that happened a day earlier for slapping three Orthodox Jewish women in Crown Heights on Friday while yelling "F you Jews." Busy weekend. The prosecutor to the judge, we're here 2 days after the defendant was here on another charge. We believe the highest level of supervised release is appropriate. The highest level of supervised release was granted by the judge, which requires Ms. Harris to check in periodically with the social worker, but nonetheless, under the bail reform, in quotation marks, instituted in New York State by those who you were here offering their pro forma condolences and expressions of outrage, Andrew Cuomo, Bill de Blasio, over the weekend in the response to the synagogue attack in Monsey. Harris walks back out onto New York City streets without putting up a dime of bail, pleading not guilty to misdemeanor charges, including assault in the third degree, menacing, and endangering the welfare of a child. That is not sitting too well across the political spectrum, unified by a disgust for the violence being directed particularly in New York, particularly against Jewish people, particularly in the last 2 weeks, but it's been going on for some time, as has been pointed out by many commentators. Jonathan Greenblatt, who is the CEO of the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, was on CNN to address that bail reform measure that is governing in cases like the Tiffany Harris one.
I feel very strongly about criminal justice reform. And we've talked about things like, and you've seen politicians like Governor Cuomo talk about bail reform, which is really important. If you jump a turnstile or you shoplift a pack of chewing gum, I'm not sure bail is the most important thing. But if you brutalize a person because of the way they pray, if you attack an individual because of where they're from, that should not be something where you're immediately getting released without bail.
And just contrast the Tiffany Harris case, and there are others. We talked about it a bit yesterday, but contrast what's going on in New York City to even Seattle, hardly a bastion of conservatism and a pro-law enforcement sentiment. A Seattle man charged Monday with a hate crime after police say he attacked two Korean tourists
because of their race, nationality, and ancestry. The 30-year-old followed a group of Korean men visiting Seattle, attacked them near a movie theater. He yelled, apparently, allegedly, "I hate Chinese," and "effing Chinese," and cowered at the group. He was arrested later the night after also stealing 2 umbrellas from the valet station at a local hotel and trying to smash a hotel window. So there was some vandalism and theft in addition to his attack on these gentlemen in Seattle. His bail, $15,000. The individual had a number of warrants for his arrest over the last several years. He's been convicted of felony assault previously, but Tiffany Harris has also had many run-ins with the law. $15,000 bond in Seattle. You take a walk, and per Bill de Blasio, you get a Metro card, you get $50 in debit cards, and you get a burner cell phone as well.
Yeah, Crime Kit 101.
Something wrong with that. For more on this topic globally, we're pleased to be joined by Deborah Lipstadt. She is a professor of Holocaust history at Emory University and also the author of Antisemitism Here and Now. Professor Lipstadt, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Why don't we just start? I mean, this is parochial, but it's important because it's important enough for Jonathan Greenblatt to point it out and others. That bail reform measure in New York State and how that's playing out in cases where you have individuals allegedly committing hate crimes against Jews.
Well, I don't think the most important thing is bail reform, but certainly in this case, I agree completely with Jonathan Greenblatt. You know, if you jump a turnstile, you steal a pack of gum, it's neither good for the person, the alleged perpetrator, nor for the system to put them, to start with bail. But if someone is going to hit someone in the street, especially in front of 2 small children, and attack them, the street is not the place for them. And I think that's a serious thing and something that has to be addressed as New York enters with this new bail reform system.
I'm sorry. The larger point that Greenblatt made was a suggestion that anti-Semitism is being normalized, and that's what troubles him.
Yes, that's
most.
Exactly right. I don't know whether there are more anti-Semites around now than there used to be. I wrote a book on this. It came out about 9 months ago, Anti-Semitism Here and Now. I spent the previous 3 years researching it, and since it's come out, I've been totally immersed in this topic. And as someone with that experience, I cannot tell you whether there are more anti-Semites. But what I can tell you, and it's exactly what you just said and what Jonathan Greenblatt was speaking to, that the anti-Semites feel emboldened. They feel it's all right to go and slap a mother in her face. It's all right to go and take a brick and knock out a Hasidic or Jew, a man who was who was obviously a Jew, and knock his teeth out. Or now, in the worst case that we've seen, Jersey City, go into a grocery store and shoot up people, or go into a home where Hanukkah is being celebrated, a rabbi's home, and with a machete and stab people. So they feel emboldened. It's on both the far right and the left. We do not look only in one political direction, but it is becoming normalized.
I have a question. I've been paying attention to this for, my adult life, the last 35 plus years. And over the last 2 decades, I've noticed there's been a big push by government to let me know that minorities cannot be racist. That has been an overwhelming push that I've noticed. And I can't help but notice as I'm reading these stories that these crimes are perpetrated by more and more minorities.
Well, I think you're right that there is, and that's what makes some of these more recent crimes, Jersey City, Monsey, the events in Crown Heights, were perpetrated by minorities. But let's also remember that Pittsburgh, the biggest massacre of Jews in the United States ever, Poway, which but for a jammed gun and an inexperienced assailant or inexperienced when it comes to guns, would have been a disaster. Halle in Germany, where on Yom Kippur, but for a bolt on the door, there would have been a massacre of Jews. Those all came from white men on the right. So I think to turn this into a minority thing, not to say that there's not a problem there and there's not a situation which has to be addressed and addressed very seriously, but addressed also with sensitivity. And by sensitivity, I don't mean hiding from the fact, but what can be done to stop this. I want to be careful in just looking at the events that have taken place that have been committed by or allegedly committed by members of minorities.
Right. I mean, I think the difference, I think, is that there's no problem, there's no controversy in addressing the scourge of white supremacist violence. But there is a real reticence to address, and this was the point that was made by Dov Hikind over the weekend on Fox News, former New York State Assemblyman. There's a real reticence to address sort of some of the hatefulness coming out of certain individuals in certain neighborhoods. And I mean, there was a really disturbing video after that kosher market shooting in Jersey City, where a Jewish gentleman representing an advocacy group went to interview a bunch of the residents of Jersey City, and the really despicable anti-Semitic things that were being said by black residents of Jersey City about their Jewish neighbors is not something that people should turn a blind eye to. And I think that was Dov Hikind's point.
Right, not at all. But I think, and I'm not making immoral equivalencies here, nor am I in any manner, shape, or form in any way justifying these attacks. They're horrible. They're unforgivable. These people shouldn't be out on the street on bail or no bail or whatever. But there are often problems when these two communities, blacks and ultra-Orthodox Jews, live in close proximity. There's very little interaction between them. And I'm going to say something which I'm not a New Yorker, but my family is from New York. I'm in New York all the time, and I follow New York very closely, which I never thought I would say. But it seems to me I heard a good idea from Bill de Blasio in this recent event, which might work. That they're going to create citizens patrols of mixed Jews and African Americans patrolling together.
Yeah.
It can't become seen as an assault of one group on the other. If it is, we'll never resolve the problem, and these two communities will continue to live next to each other. If that happens, and it happens in a constructive way and not just in a way to show off for the press and then it goes away, that might be useful. You are absolutely right, there's a serious problem here, and it has to be addressed because otherwise it's just going to get worse.
What about the political discourse? Now, I'm not one to blame a politician's rhetoric for the violent actions of somebody else, so I'm not getting into that at all, But in terms of just the quality of the rhetoric coming from certain quarters as it pertains to these issues, and just to give you an example to make my point and get your reaction, the day after the stabbing attack in Monsey, New York, Rashida Tlaib sent out a fundraising email blaming the far-right government of Israel for Jim Crow-style policies against Palestinians and black Israelis.
Mm-hmm. I think that kind of stuff is just stupid. It's inflammatory and it's stupid. Look, there were people who said, "Oh, this is all the fault of the Trump administration," and then there are people on the far right when these things happen in Pittsburgh, they say it's all the fault of the far left. I think people who only look on one side of the transom, in other words, if you're on the right and you only see it on the left, or if you're on the left and you only see it on the right, then you've got a blinder on and you're not being helpful. And this kind of rhetoric, such as that you cited, is very dangerous. I think the thing to remember is that every genocide, whether it was against Jews, whether it was against Armenian Christians, whether it was against Muslims, no matter where, whether it was in Africa, in Rwanda, in Europe, in the Holocaust, in Turkey, in the Armenian genocide, begins with words. Words count. Words matter. It always begins with words. So if you hear someone say something to them, challenge them, tell them that's not true, call them out. I don't care if you're on the right, I don't care if you're on the left, I don't care what your political views are. We've got to call out this scourge, otherwise it's only going to get worse.
Very good. She is Deborah Lipstadt. She's a professor of Holocaust history at Emory University and the author of Antisemitism Here and Now. Professor Lipstadt, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for addressing this topic. It's important.
Pleasure. Happy New Year to you. And she joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
You probably don't realize this, but between you and your employer, you've contributed as much as 12.4% of your earnings to Social Security, and you've been doing this since your very first paycheck as a kid. Add it up over 40 or 50 years, and it could make your 401k contributions look like chump change. But there's one big problem. Claiming your Social Security benefits is complicated, confusing, and riddled with trapdoors. Hi, this is Tom Portino. According to PBS and Boston University professor Lawrence Kotlikoff, the Social Security Handbook has 2,278 separate rules governing its benefits, and it has thousands upon thousands of explanations of those rules. Talk about a user's nightmare. Learn how you can help get what's yours. The answers are in our new reports on maximizing your Social Security benefit. It includes little-known strategies that could earn you tens of thousands of dollars more, even as much as $100,000 over your lifetime. This could be a game changer. Call right now to receive this information. 630